Welcome back to Nick Lenz's movie review, episode 67. This time I'm reviewing the 10th Star Trek film ever released, and the final Next Generation film, final one of the four Next Generation films. This is Star Trek Nemesis. Here's the DVD for it. Yep. Star Trek Nemesis, released in 2002, and I actually had to contradict myself. This was now, usually a lot of the time Star Wars, Star Trek don't release their films the same year. This is an exception because apparently, get this, you won't believe which Star Wars film was released the same year as this one. Attack of the Clones. Yep, released the same exact year. Along with Minority Report and MIB 2. Yep, all released the same year. Along with Jason X, Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man film, and well, that's one I can think of for big films released in 2002. Now, apparently this film got 8 by Made in Manhattan. Yeah, I'm not kidding about this. They actually, I heard something at 8 at the box that was by Made in Manhattan. Yep. And the guy who directed this film, this was his third film he ever directed, and it was the last film he directed. The first two were films I actually really liked, which were Executive Decision film star Kurt Russell and Steven Seagal. The other, of course, is U.S. Marshals, a film that starred Wesley Snipes and Tommy Lee Jones. Yep. This film also had the first film appearance that I can think of, well, at least one of the early film appearances, of Tom Hardy. Yes, the same guy who played Mad Max in Mad Max Fury Road, Bane in Dark Knight Rises, Eddie Brock in the film Venom. Yeah, this one was one of his first appearances. And he is Shea Bull for this film. Yep. And his Viceroy, who was a Reman, which they introduced him in this film, these aliens do come back in Star Trek in like 2 episodes of Enterprise. Yeah, as the bodyguards for a Romulan senator. Yep. That was pretty much what they did with them. Though the design for them pretty much was loosely inspired for the Skrulls in Captain Marvel. Yes, it's like the people who made the Skrulls with Captain Marvel basically either this film based the designs for the Remans on the Skrulls Marvel Comics, or the Skrulls from Captain Marvel was based on the Remans from this film, where they got pointed ears, which is something associated with Romulans and Vulcans. As for why they have pointed ears, never explained. As a matter of fact, Remus is technically is shown in this film in flashbacks, where now the story with Tom Hardy's character Shinzon is that he's a clone of Picard. Okay, aside from the fact that he's bald, Tom Hardy looks absolutely nothing like Patrick Stewart at all. Nope. Gotta love his suit that he has. Yep. Yeah, but this film has the most interesting opening. Now, the opening of this film is very similar to that of the film Deer Hunter. We have a very violent sequence at the film, and then we cut to a wedding. That's what happens in this film. We see the Romulan Senate in their first ever appearance ever on screen. The Romulan Senators appeared on screen, but never the Senate itself. And from the way it looks for the Romulan Senate, I'm like, did it base the style of the Senate not on the U.S. Senate, but on the original Congress from 1700s? Because you have like a handful of senators as one room. It's not like the actual Senate where it's like about like 50 senators. It's like 100 senators. Yeah, there's about in this room. It looks like roughly about 20 senators. I'd say it's basically half the size, and it's one floor with these handful of tables, and you have the Praetor. First time you actually see him in the franchise. Yeah, the position of Praetor is never mentioned before in Star Trek. Now, the highest position anybody ever seen on Romulus is First Consul. Now, Romulus itself, its first appearance in Star Trek, because Romulus appeared frequently in Star Trek prior to this. The first time Romulus appeared was in the 2-part unification from Star Trek Next Generation, which basically in a way Picard's first time he's been pinned to Romulus since on screen wise. So I don't think he revisited Romulus after this. No, I don't think he ever did. The only appearance Romulus made prior to this, after that 2-parter, was a standalone episode of Deep Space Nine. Yes. Where you have Dr. Bashir going to Romulus this time, though on an official visit, not like last time, it was an unofficial visit where you had Picard and Data go to Romulus to get Bastard Spock. Now, as for he is in this film, because it's supposed to be on Romulus, because according to way it's supposed to work, Spock is on Romulus at this point, and there's no mention of him in the whole film at all. Which I'm like, that's weird. He's supposed to be on Romulus at this point, and yet he's nowhere to be never heard or seen. It's particularly very weird. And this film is set in 2379, roughly 2 years, actually about 3 years after the last film. Now, the film itself doesn't give a body explanation of why Worf is back on board. Luckily enough, the Time 2 books does give an explanation of why he's back on board, despite the fact he's supposed to be a ambassador. Yeah, there are some books basically just explain what he was up to between the last one and this one. Basically, he served time as an ambassador. He stepped down after being ambassador for a few years and handed off to his son, who's currently ambassador right now. He's been ambassador in the books for about, basically, where it's currently about 7 years he's been ambassador. Worf is only ambassador for 3 years, yet he was very ambassador to Kronos. Yeah, the movie itself doesn't give an explanation for that at all. Also, we have Riker and Troy getting married. Yeah, completely out of the blue. Yeah, I bet some people who didn't probably read the Time 2 books after this movie came out like, when in the world are these two get engaged? Yeah, luckily enough, in the Time 2 book, this happens in the second to last book of the series, when it was Troy who proposed to Riker. These two were both 42 at this point. Yes, both these two are 42 years old. Yep. And of course, it was also in the same book, not only that Riker and Troy got engaged, Riker got promoted to captain, well, basically to commander of the Titan, which they do mention this film, but does not make a live action appearance. Nope, you have to read the Titan novels to read about his adventures with the Titan, and they're really good, except for like one book. It's damn good. It's a damn good series. Oh yeah, and Picard is best man because in the novel he was asked to be best man, so there's that. As for who the maid of honor is, they don't specifically say, though my theory could be Dr. Crusher. But they never say in the film at all. They also had this brief little moment of having like Riker and Crusher kiss. Yeah, that's kind of a small little nod to an episode when Riker was briefly host to a Trill symbiote, where they actually made out. Yeah, but it's a friendly little kiss, but there's that. There is also Data singing an Urban Berlin song, basically Blue Skies, which is put out by Data because Riker loves jazz, so sing a song associated with jazz. And guy handed to Brent Spiner. That's a really good singing. And of course, we also get a cameo from two people who have appeared in this particular franchise for a while. First, we have Whoopi Goldberg making an appearance. Yep, for this one scene. And then she's never heard from him again. I have heard she was supposed to be in First Contact, but she turned it down. Because she pointed out, you can have the Borg appear without having me show up. It's by far the only time the Borg show up was when it comes to Next Generation, and no Guinan showing up. We also have Wesley Crusher appearing in the movie in a cameo. And he does make a line. Yeah, his stuff was cut. Yeah, as for how the heck he got here, despite the fact when anybody last saw him, he was one up a traveler. That is also explained in the final volume for Time 2. A Time for War, Time for Peace, where he actually arrived on Earth butt naked. And he was beamed down in lieutenant's uniform to make sure he's actually wearing clothes. Yep. That's the explanation for that. I mean, yeah, I might be referencing the Time 2 books, but that does kind of explain loosely like what happened a year prior to the events of this particular film. Though nothing related to Romulus, but mostly read the book stuff, which does get referenced in the most recent 2 books released both Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. Yep. And of course, after the wedding, we're on the ship. We're on the actual bridge, which still looks pretty much the same. Thank God that... One thing I at least gotta praise when it comes to Next Generation films is that when they show the Enterprise E, they don't change the bridge. As far as I can tell, I don't think they ever changed the bridge. It looks pretty much exactly the same because I think they knew the Next Generation was to be a hit, so they kept reusing the same bridge. So, yeah. And of course, they made this movie while they were shooting Enterprise. Yep. And of course they decided to basically hang out for a while. Like they talk, like there's of course a funny scene like right after the wedding. Like of course we have Worf arguing with Deanna Troy, and he says, "I like it's like she's like it's tradition, Worf," and and he's like, "I will not do it." And Picard comes by and says, "You want to do what, Mr. Worf?" Captain, I think it's inappropriate for a Klingon for a Starfleet officer to appear naked. Anytime I see this scene, I always get like a laugh at that. Of course, he's supposed to chubby young fellow. He's like, yeah, he says something, and then of course he gets cut off by like a sensor reading on a distant planet near the Raman neutral zone. A planet that has pieces of a android. Well, signal that's sent with the data. Yeah, so they get on the planet, and yeah, it's an android looks like Data. They mention, and of course, they have this great sequence. Now, I'm thinking, okay, they go down to a planet. Okay, instead of walking, you ride on a vehicle, which has wheels, and it's not a hover car at all. Which, like, every time I see it, now, one person pointed out, though, this is just basically Patrick Stewart having fun. And he basically kind of groans this particular scene. Me, I love it because it's something I always wanted to see in Star Trek. Like, them driving a vehicle on an alien planet. When can you ever see this ever in Star Trek? Because a lot of the time when they go to these alien planets, especially desert planets, they're always walking. Well, someone's basically taking a vehicle out for a test drive. And by the way, this vehicle has had tires, not flying. Oh yeah, apparently in the backseat, this thing has a frickin' phaser rifle. Like, a frickin' turret gun attached to it that fires lasers. Like, the phaser beam's not basically bullets, but yeah. And, like, everybody's got sunglasses. Thank God we have frickin' sunglasses. Like, I'm sure a lot of people watch the show. It's like, okay, they're outside in the sun, and they don't wear sunglasses. Western films can easily get away with this because they're hats. But there's no reason why a sci-fi film in the future, where they're on a desert planet and they do not wear sunglasses. Thank God that some actually bothered. Remember, hey, we need to wear sunglasses. High praise for that. And it's a good scavenging scene where they basically pick up pieces, and then they get attacked when they get near like the border of this pre-warp civilization. And they get attacked with machine guns, mind you, and of course they get back to the ship. War pretty much just knocks out the doesn't kill them per se, basically just knocks the vehicles over. They get on the shuttlecraft and they fly straight back up the ship. No problem. Yep. And then they're contacted by Starfleet, and which admiral contacts them? Janeway. Yep, Janeway makes her first appearance ever in the films, and her only appearance because this is a quick cameo. And you see the Pepsi uniform, she's a Vice Admiral because this is basically like 1 year after Voyager returned home. And just by sheer acquaintance, a year after the show ended. So why not? You want to get an extra reason for this? Like how the heck she got promoted to Admiral when she got home? Read the two books, Homecoming and The Further Shore. It's a great two-part story. It does explain exactly how the heck this happened, and then there's stuff with the board that comes right afterwards. Yep. And of course, she tells Picard, you gotta go to Romulus to meet up with this new guy, Shinzon. And yeah, and of course they go to the meeting room, which they actually, for some reason, they actually changed this. Because the last this room was seen, that I did see briefly in the previous film, first time we see this particular room, there is a set of starship models on one of the walls, and they're placed with a screen. I don't know why they did this for. It's particularly very bizarre. They basically show like a map of the planet Remus, or half the planet is calling it, like one side is the sun, and the other half is always darkness. I'm like, okay, how the heck is that possible? Yeah, as far as I can tell, that's one particular thing the film doesn't explain, because normally planets supposed to spin. Apparently this planet just doesn't spin. Particularly very weird. So they get across the border, no problem, and they talk, apparently, and then they kept them waiting for 18 hours. Okay. I'm sure Picard has stuff to do, so, and eventually they make their appearance, and the first thing you see is Ron Perlman in makeup. By far, not the first time he's in makeup. Oh no, one of two times in his career I could think of. We actually wears heavy makeup to cover up his face. The of course, being the film Hellboy, which came out like 3 years after this. And he plays a Reman, who happened to be the Viceroy. Yep. And of course, being which the scimitar. By the way, I got to point out the scimitar looks absolutely fantastic in this film. I love the design of this thing. It's too bad they didn't actually reuse this in any other form medium when it comes to Star Trek. And of course, we have the crew, pretty much the entire crew, minus the ship's doctor, go on board. And there's this weird camera shot. The director, Stuart Bard, which, by the way, this was the last one we ever did. He had this weird thing of basically close-ups of all the actors' faces, and you see how much older these actors have got, with the exception of Michael Dorn, which is quite interesting. Now, I forgot to mention this in First Contact. They mentioned this in the commentary for that big mold that's on his head. Apparently, it started riding away between Generations and First Contact, so they had to get a new one. Yep. So, forgot to mention that, but yeah. And, well, they meet Shinzon briefly, cuts his hand, DNA, matches him. Of course, you have Picard and the Romulan Senate for a really fantastic scene. Let's see, what else? And of course, like means, oh yeah, it's a mistake. And of course, later on in the film, we have the awkward sex scene between Riker and Troy. And then, apparently for some reason, Shinzon develops attraction to a woman who's married. Yes, it is by far the most uncomfortable scene in the entire film. The mind rape of Deanna Troi. I'm not sure what the heck the writers were thinking when they came up with the scene. I highly doubt Brent Spiner came up with the scene. Maybe one of the other writers, but I highly doubt Brent Spiner would have a scene where one of his co-stars gets mind raped. Yes. Oh, I forgot to mention, there's a common moment when they go to that planet. I forgot to mention this. Where Picard really wants to go on the surface, and he says, well, Captain's prerogative. It's like, even though Riker's supposed to go instead, it's like, Captain's prerogative. And he says, your wife never forgave me anything happened to you. And he says, you have the bridge, Mr. Troy. the whole bridge, everybody in the bridge starts laughing. And then Riker just basically glares saying get back to work. Yeah, it's the most hilarious thing, but back to this particular scene. I'm not sure whose idea it was, but this is by far the most stupidest scene in the whole film. And it's not something that people tend to talk about very much because of how much inappropriate it is. A mind rape. Yes. And of course, she goes sick bay afterwards, and of course, they see by his side, fine. And then, while they have a conversation, all of a sudden, Picard gets beaten aboard the Scimitar. Though they reveal that B4 apparently is something wrong with him. And he gets beaten aboard as well, somehow. Though he gets replaced by Data. Somehow. Also, Spot makes appearance in this film for a quick little cameo. Yeah, Spot. And then you have Riker and Data. Not the Riker. You have Data and Picard just going through the quarters. Now, this part I think Brent Spiner wrote because you have Brent Spiner, well, as Data, getting a lot of screen time. It's like, okay, just basically punching the things up, and of course, making cool looking jokes. Of course, he picks up some rifles. You have Picard just firing his gun off, killing some Remans. And of course, talks about these awesome looking shuttlecraft, these Scorpion class attack ships. They get on board, and both fit in there perfectly fine. And like, okay, can you open doors? It's like, no, they're magnetically sealed. Okay, so he's gotta go turn around. Destroys the door that Picard just sealed with a Reman phaser rifle, and then he just goes to the ship, flies the ship, and he flies out this eye in the room they were actually in early in the film, and you see the ship is actually cloaked. And then there's and you see Shinzon looking at the screen, like, track the beam down. Yeah, his reaction is like an over-jealous fanboy. Now, when they show him prior to this, Picard, when he got beaten aboard, he got put in these restraints. And apparently for some reason, Shinzon needed a sample of his DNA for some reason. Yeah, it's never really explained why. It's like they kept changing his motivation the whole film. Like, what he's doing. And of course, he's slowly dying in the film. Yeah, apparently a sequence that was supposed to be activated at certain points was ages basically with Picard. Currently, when it's activated, start decaying and dying. Later, like before his death, like you see his veins in his face. He's basically on the verge of death. So when Picard kills him later in the film, it's basically mercy killing and also self-defense. Yeah, and of course they have the ship on red alert and well, force shield over the warp core. I'm like, what can you do in the previous films when the ship was attacked, or at least on the show, and then they're attacked by the scimitar, which apparently can fire while cloaked. I'm like, did the writers of this film rip this particular portion of the scimitar off from the Klingon ship from Star Trek 6? Apparently they did. They thought that was a cool feature. At least this time it's actually a much more better effect this time than the original film, where it looks like it was just basically a ship firing into like darkness. The effect is a heck of a lot better than this film. And of course they get help from the Romulans to defeat Shinzon, which, yeah, he's become a big problem because he was going to use this. Of course, they had this little thing of Thalaron radiation, where it's like near the ship, and it turns out it's actually on board the ship. And this thing was also used, believe it or not, in the beginning of the film to assassinate the entire Romulan Senate. Yep. With the exception of one senator who later on, after this film, became the new Praetor. Yep, she did. And then we have the Romulan show up. It's a really awesome sequence. It's the first time I can think of in a Star Trek film, first time since Star Trek 6. Another thing they ripped off from the thing, where the Enterprise gets reinforcements and then just blasts away the scimitar, though both ships are later damaged. Yeah, they're both damaged to the point where they can't exactly like do anything about it. And plus, also during the attack, this is also a first for this particular film, for this entire film series. The view screen gets destroyed, and a crewman gets sucked down into freaking space. Yes. Yeah, they get sucked off into freaking space. They don't fix this. They actually do fix this later on, like in the books, like when thing is dragged back to Earth. Yeah, they don't show how to go back to Earth. I will explain that in a minute. Yeah, eventually it was destroyed via, like, okay, apparently, like after using all their weapons, they eventually find a way to use like the mind thing against, well, the Viceroy, like Troy using Worf's, like moving Worf's hand. Eventually they do find them, and they fire, which the thing itself doesn't really prove very fruitful because all it does is basically lower their shields down to about by 30%, and that's it. Yeah, that's all they do. Lower the shields down by 30%, and that's all they do. Yeah, lower down to 70%. So, and it was at that point it was revealed that apparently they got like a few shots off of their phasers. Their photon torpedo bank, they've exhausted. They pretty much are out of photon torpedoes at this point. The car is like, okay, let's just basically have a chatter. And well, first it was a hologram thing, and then of course an intercom. And then he tells Troy to take the helm. Second time in the film series that she's done this. She did also in the Generations. And she basically directs Troy via text messaging, yes, text messaging, to ram the Enterprise into the scimitar. Because what else are they going to do than just, like, have one last one happen, just ram the ship right. It's a really cool looking effect. And the ship just rams right through it. You see the image like running like crazy, like, oh no, what's this? And of course you see the fucking Enterprise scratch right through. And then when the scimitar pulls off, apparently the Enterprise got really damaged. Like it's like this ramming effect. This took like a bite out of the saucer section. Yes, it took a bite out of it. And eventually, like Picard's like, okay, I'm out of options. Like, computer, activate the self-destruct sequence. Like he asks the computer says, self-destruct is offline. Like, okay. And then like Shenton's like out of options, like, and he says activate the weapon and then it's a course for Earth. Yeah, because his plan is to decimate the planet's population for some reason. Yeah, they kept contradicting him. And of course, they have this cool sequence. Now, even though it's not CGI, it's very well done when they have the big alien weapon they fire the Enterprise. And Picard's like, okay, there's a little power left. Okay, let's take power where we need to and just, like, transport me, just me, like, for him anyways. Takes a phaser rifle and a phaser, beams over to the Scimitar, massacres half the crew, and of course, Data gets on there, Superman style, because, well, why the heck not? Though I think people who work on this also worked on, well, Superman Returns. Because you have Data and Geordi, like, because Riker doesn't come back, because Riker, believe it or not, went off with Warp to deal with a boarding party. Yep, on deck 29, which even I call bullcrap. And it's like, okay, if you're looking for Picard, why would you start from the bottom of the ship? No, seriously, there's no reason for this at all. Like, okay, if you wanted to invade the ship to get Picard, fine. Start deck 3 or 4, not deck 29. It's ridiculous. They get into a firefight. Remus get pretty much all decimated. I think this is supposed to be the Viceroy came on board, and he gets killed by freaking Riker by being thrown down a shaft, which apparently is never ending. Yeah. They never mention what happened to his body. He could be dead. Nope, they just write it off. I don't know if it was kind of direct on the floor what could happen to a man's body, but yeah. Yeah, then of course, like, when Data briefly takes like, tells Troy to take command, of course that's when later on when Riker comes back. And Data does his Superman moment basically, because he's a freaking android. He can basically, he doesn't need to breathe. So he just flies over, yes, he freaking flies over Superman style, over to the Scimitar, types some buttons in, opens up a hatch, gets on board. He uses like emergency transport thing, which they actually set up early on before this. That is like emergency transport. He puts up a card, doesn't say a word to him. He just says goodbye, fires the phaser at the weapon, and destroys the ship. Yep. And of course, no one knows the Picard's back on board until they turn around. Yep. And then, of course, the mantra that she's actually the Roman commander appears in this film. Yes, she appeared a few times the whole film. It's just, okay, we're sending over crews and supplies. Now, the scene they don't show in the film, but they do show in the novel, is that the surviving Romulan ships tractor beam the Enterprise out of the neutral zone, and they pretty much just drag it, like, give it straight to the Starfleet ship, which are just outside the neutral zone. And of course, taking it back to Earth was going through a major refit, like, man, all that damage done. Before, just basically told what happened with Data. If you want to know what happens to him in novels, he gets sent out to the Song Institute, to the Daystrom Institute, and he's there for roughly about 5 years before he has to leave because of the whole stuff with the Breen. And let's see, what else? Yeah, Riker, of course, goes off on his ship. Yeah, he goes off the Titan, and it's and of course the movie ends like ready to go. Of course, there's a funny moment of an acid just flowing down. No one ever to explain what the heck this is, and yeah, that's the end of the movie. Yeah, okay. And of course, they had this good memorial. They had this good champagne moment, basically doing a memorial to Data. And of course, they do mention his first appearance. Well, the first time Riker met him from the episode Counter Farpoint, where he says he was whistling on the holodeck, couldn't get the tune right, and eventually someone mentioned what the song was, and yeah, that's really it. If you want to know what happens to the rest of the crew after this film, well, Warp briefly becomes the acting first officer for roughly about 2 years. Yeah, he's acting first officer for 2 years, and then becomes permanently first officer from 2381 forward. For pretty much he's been there for about 5 years. Geordi still remains chief engineer, though he's full commander now. Data does come back 5 years later, and he's not back by Starfleet, though Starfleet still recognizes the commission as the commander. Riker, so of course, had adventures aboard a Titan for about 5 years, and then he gets promoted to the rank of Admiral. Yes, he also becomes a father. Yeah, but how that's, even though that Deanna Troi is roughly in her 40s, and they tried a few times to have a kid, but they couldn't. But thanks to thanks to exposure, making Deanna Troy de-age, her body de-age, even though she's still 42, which she's roughly in her early 40s, she's able to have a child, a daughter named Tasha. Yep. Now, what about the rest? Well, let's see. As the rest of the crew, well, Dr. Crusher was moved over to Starfleet Medical to become head of Starfleet Medical. And then she's not there for very long. The second tenure is head of Starfleet Medical. And then, of course, in the book, I think it's like Winter and something, where she gets kidnapped and then Picard goes rescue her and confesses his feelings for her. And then later on, they become a couple and they get married and have a kid together. I should point out, though, Picard is roughly at this point, like he's 74 and when he marries Dr. Crusher, and Dr. Crusher was supposed to be in her 50s. Yes, she's supposed to be a woman in her 50s. And these two have a kid together. Which is a long name. Basically, Renee is the name of the kid. It's a long name. And the child himself, he is actually, believe it or not, by the time of the most recent book released, he is roughly about 7. Yes, he's 7 years old. And Picard is still in command of the Enterprise. Yep. After all this time. Yeah, and Worf, despite being first officer, he becomes romantically involved with Newt's chief of security for a few years. Then she gets murdered at the start of the Co-Equation series. Yeah, as for Geordi, he hooks up with Dr. Brahms, still a couple at this point, though not much mention of it in the most recent book released. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. There's a ton of books that came after this film to explain what happened to the crew after this particular film ended. I highly recommend. They're all really good for Next Generation. Of course, at one point in Next Generation novels after this film, they had Admiral Janeway die, and then she came back in Voyager. Yep. So yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to that particular film. As for these 4 films overall, I rank this film at number 3 of 4. Because it's a lot more interesting a story. The humor is good, and at least that the only thing I actually find wrong with this particular film, there are 2 things. 1, the contradicting nature of Shinzon. 2, the mind rape, and 3, the whole thing with Shinzon. Yes, everything related to Shinzon and the mind rape are the only 2 things I have a problem with this film. The rest of them was fine. The humor is great. The action was fantastic. The CGI is greatly improved over the last film. And it's also by far I think it's like, let's see, 1, 2, it's like, of the original 10 films, it's the 4th longest, though it gets beaten by the next film, which comes out roughly 7 years later. Yeah, this is one of 2 films released in the 2000s. The other, of course, being the next one we'll talk about next episode. Okay? Excuse me. Yeah. But there's many other. There are a couple positives about the film. The Next Generation cast do a fantastic job with the exception they did with Deanna Troy. I mean, the 2 get the most praise of how much good they did in this film is Patrick Stewart and Brent Spiner. I think Spiner wrote all of the scenes. That's just my honest opinion. It's probably by far, whenever Dave shows up, it's usually really good. It's like, I actually loved seeing this film in theater. No, I didn't see it in like a regular movie theater. I saw it at a drive-in. Yes, I saw it was a freaking drive-in. And this film, believe it or not, this film was only released 17 years ago. Yes, this movie came out when I was 14. Yes. That's not a joke. That seriously is true. I was 14 years old when this film came out. And I did see, from this point forward, I saw every film in Star Trek, released Star Trek, in theater. My dad, meanwhile, has seen all these films in theaters. All 13 of them. Yes, he saw every single film in theaters. I've only seen, out of the 13 released, I've seen roughly 5 of them. I saw this film, First Contact, and all three released for the Kelvin Timeline films, which I'll start with first one, the very next episode. Okay? But do see you next few. Bye.